All right, welcome back to our conversation, reviewing the classic, there we go, Purpose-Driven Life. Very, very popular. It was definitely the most talked about book, at least in the 90s, I know. So it's good to kind of refresh our memory, I think. We are in the first section, which is the first week of 40-day journeys and a 40-day journey, and it is on the first week is called "What on Earth Am I Here For?" And so we're looking at this week the perspective, I think. And this section starts with "Made to Last Forever," and I think it's such a point. He started off with an Abraham Lincoln quote, not to go into all of it, but he said, "Man was made for immortality." I just want to share personally, I did like going through this particular day 4 and 5. It reminded me that when you have a specific perspective on things, it can change your whole world. And by that, I mean, I got to visit the country of Jordan, Petra. If you don't know what location that is, that's the famous place that Indiana Jones rides up to, Last Crusade, with the big, beautiful front end building. And the people who live there, they had an eternal perspective. Most believe that some of these buildings that they made, which was literally chiseled out of the rock face, that wasn't stacked, it was chiseled out of the rock face. They did it because they had an eternal perspective, and they knew that they would live forever, meaning they did believe in life after death. And they created a lot of those based off of their eternal perspective. And so it just reminded me so much of that because, thousands of years later, these things are still standing in Petra, Jordan. And it can make a difference because it says, have a God-sized view. So where does this take us, Scott?
Well, what you just said reminds me of something he says in these several days that we're looking at. He asked the question, what is your unspoken life metaphor? And he gives examples.
Yeah.
Would you say life is a party? Life is a race? Life is a battle? Life is about winning? He said, whatever your metaphor for life is, or something that maybe you've never created a metaphor, but what metaphor resonates with you, he said, then that is how you are living your life. Whatever your metaphor is, that's how you're living your life. And so he spends a lot of good time, good writing, challenging us to see our lives through the eyes of God. In fact, that's actually what day 5 is all about, seeing life from God's point of view, because the way we see our lives is the way that we'll end up spending our lives, and it will, for the most part, dictate the decisions that we make. So that's really worth considering. What is your unspoken life metaphor? And then he compares the illustrations I just gave, like life is a party, to what the metaphors that God gives in the scriptures. And he gives 3. And they are, the Bible says that life is a test. Remember, so many characters in the scriptures are tested. Abraham was tested. Obviously, Jesus was tested. Jacob, Adam and Eve were tested. David, Joseph, Ruth, Esther. Now, clearly, you could look at some of those. Some passed the individual tests and some did not. But he says one metaphor is life is a test from a biblical perspective. The next one is life is a trust, which I thought was very clever. Life is a trust, meaning all of life is a gift, and we are stewarding what God has given to us as we would a trust.
Like an investment.
Like an investment.
There are stories that Jesus took. Yeah, anyway.
That's exactly right. And then the last one is, which summarizes so much of these several days, life is a temporary assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is that, do we really believe that Earth is our home, or do we believe that when we leave this Earth, we're leaving behind a temporary home, a temporary assignment to go to our eternal home and our eternal assignment? And he seems to have what I would call, what theologians might call, a rewards theology, which I tend to embrace from what I see in the scriptures, not just because it sounds good, but um, I I have been taught by one of my professors. I'll never forget Dr. excuse me, Earl Rodmacher, who's now with the Lord himself and now knows this better than you or I would know it. But one sec. He says, we are becoming, by the decisions we make today, what we will be in God's future kingdom. And so we are entrusted, right now, and we will be rewarded one day we'll use those rewards to serve God in his coming kingdom. That's very different than saying it is all about this life and simply amassing whatever I can amass. And he said, imagine if what he's saying is true. He said, once you get to heaven, within 2 seconds of being there, everything, not everything, but so many things that we deem so important, we may be kicking ourselves saying, why did I find that to be so important? Because it really had no eternal value.
Yeah.
So again, very convicting in terms of, how do I view life? Is this all there is? And then I'll just be floating around in heaven? Or is it more, as the scriptures teach, heaven is going to be a very active place, a kingdom where I will be ruling and reigning. Think about that, ruling and reigning with Christ.
Right. That's a big statement too.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Are you going to be prepared to be able to do that?
That's it. You just said it.
I think every generation goes through this question. I'm not sure if it was Brene Brown or someone who said every generation's got to deal with the shame awareness level, but I think the same goes for purpose as well. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and he wrote this book. It starts with Why, which is basically on purpose for, basically having not just individuals, but corporations even talk about their purpose. Like, why are you really doing what you're doing? But the interesting thing is his latest thing is on the infinite game, he calls it. And the infinite game is basically, it's about people. It's not about money. Money is temporary. You hit a marker and then there's another one, but the people themselves need to be trusted, and it needs to be for people. And I just thought it was a fascinating subject that he brought up for businesses to think about, because in the end, we can see what difference it makes when people are entrusted with responsibility, that we have this expectation that they're going to grow, they're going to mature. Now, in their cases, it might be in certain skill levels, but it still takes maturity growth as well to be a good leader. I mean, there's plenty of cases that we can see all over the map where bad character has led to some destruction, ending of companies, the ending of political campaigns, the ending of, take your pick, of churches too. So I think, again, the generation to be remembering that it's not the fast food, microwaved, temporary, I'm going to just get a quick fix, but it's the long game. It's the infinite, and it's directed by God, right?
That's right. Yep. It's having an eternal perspective. And they have one thing I like about this book is that they have devotions, brief questions at the end of each day that of course dealt with the content in that day. And some of the early questions are questions like, how does what you just read change your life? If it's true
Mm-hmm.
that at death you won't leave home but you'll go home, if you embrace that, how does that change your life? By the way, again, you may not embrace that at all. You may not believe in God, or you may be agnostic. He does spend he doesn't go into great, what I would call, apologetic detail, making a defense for the faith.
Yeah.
But he does say that's just not the intention of this book.
Mm-hmm.
But he does make what I think is a good apologetic or a good defense for the faith. I think we do have to logically embrace, if there is no God, then truly, if you play this out over time, everything truly is meaningless.
Yeah.
Apart from God, not only is everything meaningless, but I'm meaningless, right? I mean,
and not only that, but like, what's the point? You know, it's no wonder why honestly it would be a good foundation for suicide, because you're like, what's the point of keep going? You know, what's the point of the work I'm doing? What's the, you know, if everyone is going to die, why even alleviate poverty? Right? Like, if it's just going to end in dust, then it's just then we're all just waiting, right?
that's right.
I think the apologetics is in its form of, if you dive deep into purpose, if you dive deep into this infinite game, this immortality that Abraham Lincoln talks about, then I think you can discover that, well, the only thing that can legitimize that is the presence of God himself, right?
That's right. So again, we encourage you to pick up this outstanding book. It will challenge you, it will motivate you, it will convict you. And I do want to end by saying, if you have questions like, well, I'd love to not necessarily debate. I'm not a great debater, but I'd love to. I'm sure Nathan the same.
Have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it, because I know Nathan may, but I certainly don't know everything. But I'd love to share, some things that I've picked up along the way and hear what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So feel free to reach out. You can always send an email to me, or through me to Nathan at care at visitccc.com. All right. Well, we will call it. We'll end this session and we'll pick it up again with the next one, which will start with day 8, start of a new week. Thanks for being with us, and see you next time.
See you guys.